Hi, everyone, and welcome to Transitions. I'm Anne Wagner, your host, and I have the delight and pleasure to introduce Gina Horswood today.
Good morning, afternoon, whatever it may be.
And for those of you that aren't yet familiar with Gina, you're in for a real treat. She's an amazingly gifted musician, grounded right here in Huntsville.
That is true. Well, the Huntsville part. I don't know about the amazingly gifted, but I'll take it.
Absolutely. And Gina, you're joining us as part of our series. Our theme is Women in Music.
I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
And like last week, this week we're doing something different, and we've stepped right outside of the studio.
Yes, and what a pleasure it is so far. I'm really excited.
So just to start us off, I'm wondering if you could talk about the importance of music in your life.
Yeah, I mean, music was always kind of a given. I won't say I was forced into it, but my family was very musical. So as a child, I was introduced to singing and the stage and all that kind of stuff. And when I was 13, some pretty major things happened in my life. My parents got divorced, and there was some pretty hardcore mental issues that came along with that. Not just with myself, but many members of my family suffered. And that's really when I started to write songs. So music, songwriting in particular, has always been kind of my therapy, I guess. Much cheaper than an actual paid therapist and much more accessible. So it's been a huge part of my life since I was a kid, and then really for a long time my saving grace, I guess you could say.
So when you were first starting out in songwriting and it was therapeutic for you, were you sharing those songs? Would you perform them for people?
It took me a few years to really get comfortable enough to perform them in front of a larger crowd. I would play them to my mom or my dad or my sister, and my sister and I would write together as well in those early years. But it really took me quite a while to get confident enough, confident enough on the guitar or an instrument to back myself, and then confident enough to share the story, I guess. So you have to be quite vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And yeah, like I was really probably at least 16 years old before I started performing my own songs live.
And then those were autobiographial songs, were they?
Yeah,
largely?
for the most part. My dad always taught me, even before I started writing songs, I'd have these grand ideas of learning a really complicated song and wanting to sing it and not be ready, really, to play it live. And Dad would always say, do what you know. And that lesson really rang through in my songwriting, I think. It started off just as something I needed to do, I was compelled to do, and then as time progressed and I kind of started actually working on the craft, I realized that the best songs came from what I knew, which was my story, and so that's really what I've stuck to.
And what was the feeling of your family and the people around you and your friends if they were getting drawn into your music?
Yeah, for the most part, it was very accepted and definitely encouraged. Probably in the last 4 or 5 years, I've become extremely honest.
Okay.
Sometimes brutally so, and they struggle with that sometimes. But if you can't say it in song, then where else can you say it safely? So I stick to my guns and I say what I feel I need to say. Sometimes at the expense of people dear to me, but ultimately everyone is okay with the message in the end. So.
And some of your songs, which I've heard you perform many times, they really pack an emotional punch.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, it really is my therapy. And so if there's something that's on my mind that I need to get out, I write about it. And quite often it's not even an intentional thought or a conscious thought. I write and I look back 2 or 3 days later and I sort of think to myself, oh, that's that's harsh, or maybe a little too much truth for some people that are involved in the story. But, it's my story to tell, and I think that everybody has a story and should be able to speak of it freely. So thankfully we live in places where that's allowed. And no, I would say 9 times out of 10, most people that are affected by the truth of the story hear them and go, okay, that's fair. I get it. So, so I do get a little bit emotional, sometimes a little bit introverted when it comes to the writing, but that's my thing. So I just keep doing it.
So it really is powerful to watch you perform because you are talking about your own experiences from your heart.
Yep.
And that really comes across when you perform.
Yeah, I'm a photographer's nightmare because I can't keep my eyes open. During song, like, it doesn't really matter. It could be a song I wrote when I was 13 or a song I wrote when I was 23 or a song I wrote yesterday. But I always tend to kind of transport to where I was when I wrote it. And I guess that's where that realness comes from, is I'm in the moment of what I was feeling when I wrote that song. So, there's 2 parts to it. It was a very real thing when I wrote it, and it becomes a very real thing again when I sing it. So I hope that comes across in the performance.
Absolutely. Would you maybe like to play a song?
Sure. I'll do, this is a little tune called Polka Dot Bows. I was, my first ever kiss was by my hometown football team football star, if that makes sense. And unfortunately we lost him last year, and I wrote this song kind of based on that experience. Sometimes I watch memories from home, and I stumble across new videos of girls making songs on stages I used to know. And they all line up in a perfect row with their mini guitars and their polka dot bows and their red lips, lace dresses. They're effortlessly cool by default. And I'm not in their scene, and I'm not in their crew, and I can't help but think maybe that you would have stayed if I'd formed a part of popular consensus. Oh, but don't worry, God, you're not the only one. My mom would have liked it if I'd have stayed home and kept studying the law, singing on the side, been a better daughter, been a better wife. Oh, I could buy land in Chinchilla and accept my plight and spit out grandchildren and increase the size of my hips and portfolio of property, divorce, and desire. Sometimes I envy my friends who chose to stay home, but I refuse to regret my choice to go. Oh, take me or leave it. There is one thing that you ought to know. I am the happiest I've ever been over here in the cold, on the outside. Hey, I'm on the outside. I'm always on the outside. But I like the outside.
Wow. Thank you. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
We're just going to pause here now for a quick break from our sponsors, and I'll be right back with Gina Horswood. Hi, welcome back to Transitions. I'm Anne Wagner, and I'm here with Gina Horswood, who just played the most amazing song.
Thank you.
And people might have noticed that you refer to your hometown of Chinchilla.
I do in that one, yes.
And that really speaks to your varied history. You've traveled many countries. Your music career's taken you many places.
Yes.
And you also have earned the nickname of the Thriller from Chinchilla.
Yes, thank you, Ken Cole and James Carroll. That nickname made it across the pond just last week. So, my hometown newspaper ran the story, and the headline was, "Local singer is the Thriller from Chinchilla."
That's impressive.
That happened, yeah.
So, how did it happen that you ended up leaving Chinchilla?
I left as soon as I graduated high school. So I got into law school and I moved to Brisbane, which was the closest city to Chinchilla, about 300 kilometres away. And I tried really hard to enjoy that, and I didn't. Long story short, I tried a number of different careers and ultimately ended up kind of in the corporate world as a project manager and hated that as well, and realized that music was kind of it. And at that point, I thought Nashville was the place to be. And so the plan was to sort of settle in Nashville, and I was involved with a boy and a company who could make that happen. He was Australian. I wasn't getting, married for illegitimate reasons, just so everyone's clear. But before I settled down, I decided I wanted to see Europe and do some traveling because I hadn't done that yet. So I left Australia and with the backpack and my guitar, and I did about a month in Nepal, and I hiked the Himalayas, which was amazing. And then from there I flew to the UK, where I had a good friend of mine, and then I did Europe for a little while. I did Ireland, eventually made my way to New York, where I caught up with some friends from Australia, and we did Route 66 together. And in that time frame, I also met my friend Jessie Cole from Huntsville, and then I got to LA, and it was basically fly home or go to Nashville. And by that point, the settling down in Nashville option had dissipated, was no longer there, and I thought, well, you know what, I'll go to Nashville anyway. So I rented a room off a Craigslist advertisement, and went to Nashville and was there for 2 months, and then ran out of money, essentially, and got the bus to Canada because I had my working visa for Canada and kind of never left. So here we are in Huntsville, because the only Canadian I knew was Jesse, and he dropped me off at his mum and dad's, and the rest is really history. I just, stayed. after that.
So what was it that enticed you to stay?
I think I fell in love with Toronto. I love the city. I still do. I love that I can explore it and find new things every day. I feel safe there, which is a big thing, especially coming from Nashville, where I felt very unsafe for the most part. I also had the amazing opportunity to be in Muskoka, which, I mean, is stunning. So when people ask me why I'm here, I send them a photo of my view and they understand.
Oh, okay.
And just musically, I think people really listened. People were very appreciative, and whether it was because Canadians are just really polite or which is true, I do believe, but they were intrigued by my story and what I had to say musically, so it just felt like a really good place to be, and it still does.
So you came here for a reason.
I believe, yes, and I think until, I've learned all the things I need to learn from Canada, I'll be here. So it doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon.
So, Gina, you regularly play around both Muskoka and Toronto?
I do, yes. I've got my next Toronto date is Saturday the 13th of June, I believe it is, at a little club on Queen West called the Tennessee. I'm there again the following Tuesday. Just last Wednesday, I played the Muskoka Perry Sound Sexual Assault Services annual party, I think it is, which was a ton of fun. And other than that, I think my website's probably the best way to find out where I'll be.
And we can definitely link our listeners to that via our Facebook page.
Yes.
And so that's another aspect of your music. You're very generous. You're very involved with your community. And you do play a lot of charity events and so forth.
Yeah, well, I think I am still incredibly grateful for the way that the community in Muskoka embraced me and still embraces me. I feel like, it really is home. I've said the story before. I walked into Hunters Bay Radio and immediately was embraced by Jeff and James, and it's really kind of my musical home in Canada, I feel. So in any way I can give back, I will. And yeah, what I have to give is music, so...
Well, that's a wonderful sentiment. So would you like to play maybe another song?
Sure. I'll do another new one. This is coming out on the new album. And my Chinchilla is now a coal mining town, for those that haven't heard that story. They discovered that long after I left the first time around, but... My dad and I both worked on the coal mine, and he got fired just last year, so I thought I'd write him a song to cheer him up, and that's this one. Well, my dad, he worked the coal mine, and he counted the clicks as the fuel pumped down the line, trying to keep himself occupied. 13 bored years, they rolled on by. Nothing changed but the rubber tires and the fire that once burned bright in a brilliant night. How can anybody understand the pain that pierces through a man when he knows there's nothing left to do? Well, my dad, he got laid off that coal mine the same day they told him his mother was dying. Simon, it ain't no friend of mine. My dad, he could have changed the world. Instead he tried to build a world with 3 little lost souls. And my mother, she catch his reflection in the mirror when I'm wishing I was anywhere but here, and he's saying, don't let life take the good out of you. Don't let life take the good out of you. Don't let life take the good out of you. Don't let life take the good out of you. Oh, baby girl, it's a cruel world, so don't let life take the good out of you. Don't let life take the good out of you. No, don't let life take the good out of you. Don't let life take the good out of you. Oh, don't let life take the good out of you. No, don't let life take the good out of you.
What an inspirational song. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Well, we're out of time for this show, but maybe we can entice you to come back again.
I would love to.
That would be wonderful. So to our listeners, you can connect with us via our Facebook page or email us at transitions@hbr@gmail.com with any comments or suggestions about the show. That's transitions@athbr@gmail.com. So Gina, once again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll be back with you listeners next week.